Welcome to the South Florida M&A Advisors Podcast, your trusted M&A team. Here's your host, Russell Cohen.
All right, I'm Russell Cohen from South Florida M&A Advisors. And today, we have Matt Kinsey from IT Fusion. Thank you for joining the podcast, Matt.
Glad to be here, Russell.
All right, fantastic. So today, our theme is going to be how IT readiness impacts valuation and deal success in the lower middle market. And Matt and I have known each other for a few years now, and we thought this would be a great topic to talk about the lower middle market. So opening question, for owners thinking about selling, IT is really often overlooked. How big of a role does it actually play in a transaction? Maybe you could shed some light on that.
Well, I mean, like anything else, it depends. It's going to depend on the buyer. It's going to depend on their risk tolerance. It's going to depend on the industry you're in. A trades deal may not be as impacted by a IT issue as a medical practice. Medical practice has a lot more IT needs, although that's changing on a daily basis with the introduction of artificial intelligence and how it's improving efficiencies and business practice across many organizations. The way I look at it, I don't know how you think about this, Russell, but buyers aren't buying a company, they're buying a risk profile. And IT is really part of the risk profile of the company. So the more mature it is, the less risk there is in the deal for the IT buyer, for the buyer. And the more practices that they're doing, the less risk there is. So I think the question in their mind is, okay, you as the owner, you've generated, X percent EBITDA. Let's say you're at 15% EBITDA. You got a really efficient business. And they're like, well, can we replicate that? Can we improve that? Because if they just replicate it, then their payback time is quite long. But if they can improve it, and they don't have to invest in IT systems and cybersecurity and compliance, then there's less money that they have to put in after the deal closes.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, it just depending on the type of business that the advisor is selling, there's bigger risk, like you said, in medical versus the trades, which is very common, which I'm dealing with. What do you, from your experience, what's the most common IT issue, surprises that you would see during due diligence, the quality of earnings?
I think the biggest thing is can I trust the data that I've got? And when you don't have mature IT systems, it brings the quality of that data into question. It's a sign of how trustworthy is this company. I think the biggest thing I see is lack of controls. So they're doing things. They've got the software. They've got antivirus. They may have phishing protection. They may even be doing things like security awareness training. But are they locking out administrator access? Are they using multi-factor authentication where they need to? Do they have a firewall? I mean, these types of technical questions that come up, and as well as the process questions. It's about how mature the business is. If I'm going to buy a business and they've got written processes that are easy to follow, easy to understand, I feel really good that we can replicate or improve the results. But if they don't have that written processes, I don't feel that way.
I would think the larger the company, the more likelihood they've made that investment. The smaller companies are probably thinking about it or haven't made that huge capital investment. But I would think the larger companies,
you would think so. You would think so. But I mean, I recently went into a 25-person firm that's doing somewhere around $6 million a year. So a lower market M&A deal. Their controls are woeful.
Haven't invested the money into their infrastructure.
They haven't. They've thought I'm not a target, which is completely inaccurate. But I think we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, no problem. So can IT infrastructure actually impact the valuation on deal multiples?
I've seen it happen, especially in data sensitive organizations, but even in lower deals, it's what am I going to have to invest? Let's say I'm a buyer and I'm adding company into my portfolio, what am I going to have to invest in order to get it up to standards?
Yeah,
That's
a
a
lot of
post
times
deal.
these private equity groups have these larger companies that already made that infrastructure investment. Now they're doing the add-ons, and the companies that they're buying had very minimal investment, so they know they got to bring it to the next level.
Yeah, and the standards just aren't there. And now some of it's sunk cost. If I have a standard that I use, CrowdStrike, and you're using something else, well, I know I'm going to stop using it. I'm going to put CrowdStrike on as the buyer because that's what I use everywhere and I can manage it. But there's not a hidden breach that I'm worried about. And that's, I think, what concerns people, because quite often the cyber criminal is in your system for a long period of time before they actually trigger their cyber criminal activities. They're trying to figure out who you are, what data they have access to. Can I copy the data so that now I have something to sell, even if I don't get money from you? I'm going to get money from other people with your data. There's all these questions that the cyber criminal has, and we've seen instances in the news where they've been in the system for years
Wow.
without being discovered. And that's a hidden risk. And sometimes what I'm seeing now is holdbacks on the deal, for a certain period of time to make sure there wasn't a cyber breach, to make sure there wasn't some hidden liability, especially with the compliance standards. If something happened 6 months ago and now I bought the company and I wasn't aware of it, and now there's a data breach, and I, as a new owner, have to notify all my customers and go through all this, well, that's money out of my pocket that I wasn't planning to spend. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
something that happened from before the deal took place.
pretty scary that you mentioned they're actually sitting in there waiting for
Yeah.
the time to strike. You're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's unbelievable. Who would think that, they would just be waiting? But so what does a deal ready IT environment look like for a $2 to $20 million business?
I think what it looks like is that you have mature IT practices. So you have the IT systems in place to manage your IT. You have a map, an atlas of what your systems are and how the data flows between them so that I can do the risk analysis. You have the cybersecurity tools that you need to not only protect, but to detect and to recover in the case of a breach. And you've got the compliance standards based on your industry, whether that's HIPAA or PCI compliance because you take credit cards, or FTC safeguards because you're an auto dealership, or Florida Information Protection Act of 2014 because you have certain types of data in the state of Florida, because I know you might primarily work in Florida. Those are the types of things, because they don't want a hidden risk to pop up after the deal.
So if the owner had 90 days before going to market, which, that's not much time, where should they focus from an IT standpoint?
I, it's really hard to say. That's where you want to get an analysis, and what we're seeing on deals now is due diligence on the IT systems to make sure. So what I would do is I would get an analysis from somebody and say, okay, let's get an analysis. So this is something my company offers, and many other companies offer, and they'll come in and say, okay, here's what you need to do to maximize the value. And what's like any other business decision, what's going to give me the biggest impact on the deal? I'm sure you walk in and people's books are a mess. Uh, so you bring in an accountant, you clean up the books, and that has a huge impact on the deal for a relatively small amount of money. So that's the same question I think you want to ask, especially if you're intending to sell the business. You want to say, what can make the most amount of sense for me to implement now? And a lot of times it's not technology, it's process. I just met with um, a company doing a cybersecurity assessment, and we found 250 social security numbers in documents on their system that I was easily able to access.
Wow.
Well, they already have a secure document storage facility. It's just people were downloading it, they were uploading it to their secure facility, but they weren't removing it from their downloads folder. So that's a process. that was easy to fix. It didn't cost them anything to fix it. It just cost them some due diligence to make sure that people were doing the right thing. But then we also found some technical issues that were low, like their firewall was outdated. Well, you can get a firewall for under $1,000.
Right.
All right, and get those protections in, and now you're protecting the data protecting the business better.
What are the biggest IT red flags that you typically uncover during diligence?
I'd say the biggest one is just is lack of process. You don't have the policies, the processes, the procedures in place to protect the business. Simple things like, when do you run your security patches? Are they run on a schedule, or are you just letting Microsoft control it? Are you testing them? What are you doing with backups? How often are you backing up? How often are you testing your backups? Do you have a business continuity plan in case you have a fire at your location? What about the data? Is the data stored just locally, or is there a backup stored in the cloud as well, so you always have access to it? These types of questions about resiliency. You'll hear the phrase cyber resiliency, and the more resilient your business is, the more it's able to withstand potential downtime because of a system failure or because of a security issue, the more value there is in your company and the less risk there is to the buyer.
Now, have you seen deals delayed or retraded because of IT issues? Have you firsthand experience seeing that?
Yes, we had a client who was acquired. We fortunately were able to keep them as the IT company
Great.
after the acquisition. But we received a document from the buyer, and it was a long document. I mean, more than 10 pages. I won't tell you exactly how many, but it was more than 10 pages. It took us quite a while to go through and fill it out. We did charge the company for that, because that's not part of the normal maintenance. We sent them our contract, and then they sent back a bunch of questions. I didn't charge them to send the contract, but I charged them to answer the other questions. And about a week later, after we sent it back, the owner of the local company called me and said, "We need to fix these things, or the deal's falling apart."
Oh my God. Unbelievable.
And the thing is that these were things I had been talking to the owner about investing in for at least a year.
You're planting the seed, but they were thinking they were probably selling, so why would we need to do that, right?
Right. And the owner, the buying company, just said, "We're not purchasing unless you address these." Some of them did not cost any money to address. Some of them were process. They wanted a business continuity plan. They wanted a disaster recovery plan. They wanted an incident response plan, like, who do you call, where's the cyber insurance, et cetera. They wanted an insurance policy to cover the company. So there were all these things, and every deal's different. And this one was in the trades, which was interesting.
Amazing. Well, I guess, a good lead-in is your company's IT private equity ready? Because it sounds like most companies aren't. And everyone has a goal of selling in the long run. If they're going to work on put the money into the books, they got to put the money into the IT, because the private equity group's probably at the very highest level, and you're not. Right?
Well, look at it this way. Let's say you're in the trades. I know you do a lot of work in the trades, and you've got a fleet of vans, and all of your vans are 15 years old. Okay, and they've all got 200,000 miles on them. Well, what is the owner thinking? Because I'm going to have to buy a dozen new vans,
right,
to close the deal. It's the same thing. If you've got antiquated systems, they know they're going to have to buy new systems to get it up to speed.
Now let's talk about cybersecurity, because that's very important. I know you're really strong on that, on top of all the topics in your industry. How are buyers evaluating cybersecurity risk in smaller businesses today?
It is an essential, I think, from what I'm seeing more and more. Now, again, it depends on the industry. A small restaurant that's got 30 seats in it doesn't have the same issue as a multi-location company that's dealing with more sensitive data. So that's always truth. But the truth is, every single company is a target, because most of these attacks are automated. So there's not some guy going, oh, I want to go after Russell's business. There, I'll use an analogy. Where I live, I guess about a year ago, we got a notice from the police to remind us to lock our car doors at night because there were a group of people going up and down the streets and just trying to open your car door. They weren't targeting you specifically. They just came to your street, walked down, and if they could open your car door, they would get in and rifle through and see what they could get out of your car. All right. It's the same thing. That's what these automated systems do. They're searching the internet and they go, oh, that's interesting. I can get in. Now let me see what I can do. But if they can't get in, they move on to the next target.
So small or large, everyone's a target at the same time, basically.
Everyone's a target. Now, there are some industries that are more targeted because, for example, health data is extremely valuable on the internet. Financial data is extremely valuable to cyber criminals. So those two areas in particular have large values, and that's why you see in federal standards like FTC safeguards, like HIPAA, to help protect that data.
So what are the must-have protections before going to market?
Well, you have to have some type of anti-malware. So that is, whether that's antivirus or EDR or MDR, there's all these different terms. But you need to be able to protect your endpoints. You need to be able to protect your network, the physical network where your people work. You want some type of monitoring from a third party. So a security operations center that's watching the system for signs of compromise 24 hours a day. And you pretty much now you need to have security awareness training because the weakest link is your people. So these are things like sending out fake phishing emails to see who clicks on them. These are things like sending out security tips on a regular basis. Annual security training is required by some industry standards and some federal standards. So those types of things I think are the absolutely core essentials that every business needs. And if you talk to most third-party IT providers, they're going to provide those.
Have you seen a breach impact a transaction?
I've seen a breach kill a transaction.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
horrible.
Oh, well, let's put it this way. It was a medical office. There was a breach. They were in the due diligence. They had to report the breach. The buyer walked out because now the company is going to have to spend 6 figures to address the breach.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So going on to like a preparation playbook, what does IT readiness assessment look like before a sale? Because you mentioned that in the past.
Yeah, I think what it looks like is getting somebody in, and there are companies that do this. We can do this. We can come in and do an assessment. We can do a security assessment. We can do a process assessment. It's a relatively simple process, and we can identify things that you would want to address prior to sale to increase the value of your business. Honestly, I don't recommend using AI to do this process right now because the AI can't get into your system. It can tell you things to look for. So it'll ask you this, and I went through and just to see what it would say, I went through and it was talking about, cybersecurity is now, they call it a deal gateway. Are you scalable? The biggest thing is, IT debt. And what they mean by IT debt is things that you should have invested in or you would have been wiser to invest in and you haven't. And now that's creating a debt to the business that's not on the books that needs to be dealt with. And then the big thing is compliance and regulatory exposure. That is huge because if you have issues with IT regulations in your industry or from the federal government that you're supposed to be meeting and you're not, that is a huge risk to the organization.
Now, how far in advance would you start preparing, where sellers should start preparing?
I would begin a year out. I would begin a year out. I mean, how quick do you need to fix your books? Well, a year out.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not something where you decide, oh, I'm going to sell my business. And let's be honest, very few businesses sell in 90 days. Okay, there's a whole process, especially the bigger the deal. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, you were working on a deal for a year. Okay, and it almost fell apart multiple times.
Mhm.
What you want to do is you want to eliminate the reasons the deal's going to fall apart that you can control as the business owner. And IT is one you have complete control over. You know, the buyer doesn't care which antivirus you're running. They want to know you're running antivirus. They want to know somebody's looking at your system. They don't care whether you're doing it in-house or you're using a third party. But I would definitely bring in a third party to look at this. If your IT people are in-house, I'm sure they're great people. I'm sure that they're doing the best job they can. There are things they probably don't know. That's why I have a team of 9 people. There are things I don't know, but there are other people on my team who know them, and I bring them in.
So let's say we get to the closing table and now we're in post integration. So where does the IT integrations usually break down post closing?
So the reality is that something like 80% of IT projects are late and over budget.
Mhm.
Okay. So the biggest area we see it is in data integrity. Some companies aren't very mature in the way they track their data. So I'll use my industry. I have multiple systems that record a company name. Okay. Is that company name recorded the same place everywhere? So that when I pull data in, I don't have to do a lot of data cleanup because that adds a lot of cost to it. Is my data, and they call it normalized data. So does it always say South Florida M&A, or does it say South Florida mergers and acquisitions? Does it say Russell Cohen? I mean, all of those could be you as a company, but how is it actually recorded in every system? So when I pull the data over, I don't have to do a lot of cleanup because that adds a lot of cost to most deals. Is the data clean? The other area is, do you have administrative access to everything? You'd be surprised. I I met with a company. They did not have administrative access to their Microsoft email tenant.
Hmm.
Okay, because their previous IT company that they fired refused to give it to them, and we had to go through a process with Microsoft to get it back. We were able to do it, but it was a pain in the neck, and it delayed things while we were doing it. That could have broken a deal. So those types of issues are really important as you work through them to make sure that your deal there's not another reason for the deal. There's enough reasons for a deal to fall through.
Yeah.
You're just trying to remove things that you have control over.
Just be more proactive, no doubt, right?
I think that's the standard in most industries right now, and the standard in court is what would a reasonable business owner do? And that used to be this nebulous term, but the court cases over the last few years have pretty much defined what a reasonable business owner does. And it says, I picked a standard and we're following it, whether it's the NIST standard, whether it's a CSF standard. There's all these different industry standards for cybersecurity and IT management. So we picked one and we're following it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we're on this journey. And if you're on the journey, you immediately create more reliability in the data that you're presenting, even if you're just a few steps into the journey. Maybe you're not all the way down at the end of the journey, but you're on that process because it's a thought process as much as a technical issue.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're one last question. And let's say if a business owner was planning on selling in the next 1 to 3 years, what top 3 IT moves can they make today to make their business better prepared for sale?
Well, first, if you haven't had a third-party assessment, get a third-party assessment scheduled. Have someone come in and look at your business, just like you have your CPA come in and look at your books. Have someone come in and look at your business and make sure that they'll help you identify specifically in your business what needs to be done. So that's number one. Number two, plan to invest something. Okay, Figure out what your business is and then leverage that for the things that are going to make the most business sense. And those are things that are going to do one of three things. If you're going to bring in IT sales, are going to IT projects are going to increase sales. Buyers love that. If you're going to do it, that it's going to reduce costs. Buyers love that. And if you're going to do it, that it reduces your risk profile. Buyers love that. So those are the areas to do that. Things that are nice to have, put on the shelf. You don't need those. But if they're going to increase sales, reduce costs, or reduce risk to the organization, then that's where I would invest my money.
Perfect. So, a seller has a team of advisors. They got their financial advisor, they got the M&A advisor, they got legal counsel,
Yeah.
they have consultants coming in. You would think that you're part of the team. Matt Kinsey and IT Fusion's part of the seller's team to guide the business owner to the finish line. So, it's a natural, if you're going to work with a professional buyer, you need professional experts in every angle of your business, because these buyers, this is what they do for a living, and most owners don't understand the IT part completely. So
yeah,
it's so important to have those special advisors as part of the team to get to the finish line.
Why do you think people have created a business out of removing your experience of having to go to a car dealership to buy a car?
Yeah.
Why are people willing to pay, or actually you don't even have to pay in most cases because the dealer will pay them, and they'll go through and they'll negotiate the deal for you. They'll get the car delivered to you because they're experts in this and they know how to get the best deal on the car.
So Matt, why don't you give a little plug for your company and how can people reach out to you, and that would be great because you've helped so many business owners today understand what their IT needs will be, so important in an M&A transaction.
Yeah, so we're located here in Southeast Florida, in Broward County. All three of our partners are here in Broward County, but we have customers all the way west to California. So we haven't expanded north. We've been going west, but not too much north so far. But we've got a team of 9 people here. We work primarily with legal and CPA firms, but we also have many clients in the trades that are willing to invest the money to create mature IT systems to reduce their business risk. So we focus on it as a business risk rather than an IT maintenance issue. It's what's the business risk? How can we help you manage that? So our website is itfusiontech.com, and you can email us at info@itfusiontech.com or give us a call at 954-900-1654. And we'd be glad to do an assessment. Just if you mentioned that you were on this podcast and wanted interested, we can do a complimentary assessment for you, courtesy of Russell Cohen. And we'd be glad to do that for you to help you as you work through your IT process in preparation for a sale.
Matt, thank you for coming on the podcast. Extremely educational, so important. It has got me thinking even more in my deals now. So definitely we'll be bringing you in some of those deals to make sure we're private equity ready. And I say that all the time. So thank you for joining the podcast.
Glad to be here, Russell. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the South Florida M&A Advisors Podcast. For more information, visit southfloridama.com or contact 954-646-7651.